to Grid Live pre-race NASCAR Cup Series, the Quaker State 400% by Walmart at EchoPark Speedway, formerly Atlanta Motor Speedway, Joe San Diego. And with me we have Jonathan Fields from The Racing Expert and Tanner Smith, editor from the Pitbox Press. A big thank you to our Patreon investors calling the show, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew, who are invested in the Grid Network each and every month. Very excited to see tonight's race, and of course, very excited to be on the air. You can just contribute through YouTube Super Chat, buy me a coffee, especially if you want to buy a coffee or a Super Chat for Nicole, where you saw the show earlier today for the F1 pre-race. I had a power outage. She managed to keep going through when I was out, but we made the show work. No power outage yet here again in the Portland area, so hopefully all is good. And definitely we don't want a power outage in Atlanta because they're going to be racing under the lights tonight. EchoPark Speedway, as I mentioned, formerly known as Atlanta Motor Speedway. I know, Jonathan, you shared a post from Bob Pockris. They do have lights in the exact same spot as Atlanta Motor Speedway did. The Quaker State 400, Joey Logano on the pole. And what a lineup we have. You have Josh Berry on the outside, so Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric in the second row, all Penske, 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, Wood Brothers technical lines with Penske, plus more Fords to look out for as they occupy the top 8 spots on the grid. But this track races like a Daytona. Maybe not so much as a Talladega, because here it seems like handling might be a little bit of an issue, but we are racing under the lights, cooler conditions, more grip traditionally, and that's where we see a little bit more of the pack racing. But we saw this last time at the racetrack when it was then called Atlanta Motor Speedway. It feels a little bit more spread out. Jonathan, will the qualifying results from Ford be an indicator that they're going to have a stronghold in the Quaker State 400, considering it's now nighttime?
I don't think so. You know, like we look at qualifying at Atlanta, and Ford is actually undefeated ever since they've gone to this high bank configuration. And in the race, I mean, you look at 2022, you had the Hendrick cars winning the races, you know, and then in 2023, you had, a Hendrick car, you had a Ford, and then last year you had Suarez and a Ford, and then back in the spring, of course, it was Christopher Bell. So I think Ford is definitely the favorite for this race, specifically guys like Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric, Josh Berry as well. But I wouldn't give the race to them yet, because obviously this is super speedway racing. There are a lot of different variables to it. And there are some guys who are really good at this track who I think will contend with the Fords.
Yeah, just to kind of tag off of Jonathan's point, I think that there are only 2 repeat winners on this new configuration. William Byron, who won the very first 500 miler that we did here, and the only 500 miler that we'll probably ever do at this configuration, and the rain race in 2023, where he stayed out under caution and was able to stay out front and win that race when the weather came. And then Joey Logano winning the 23 spring race and the 24 fall race. So there hasn't really been, in my opinion, a consensus contender at this track outside of like Daniel Suarez. And even this past spring, he had a very terrible race. So I don't think that anybody could really be listed as a favorite, even one manufacturer that does have a pretty significant qualifying record at this particular facility. But I feel like for the first couple stages, if I had to take a bet, I would say that a Ford will probably sweep the stages. But at the end of the evening, I think that to say we'll have a Ford be in victory lane with, a number of Fords surrounded, by them, I don't think I agree with that. We got down to the end of the spring race here this year, and it came down to 2 Chevys and a Toyota. So, yeah, like I said, I think that since there haven't really been a whole lot of repeat winners here, there haven't been a whole lot of true repeat contenders at this track, it's really hard to say that one manufacturer is going to have a dominant performance here compared to another. But at the same time, Ford obviously does put on a really strong qualifying effort here, so I do expect their drivers to run toward the front at the beginning of the race, but by the end of it, when attrition starts shaving everybody down, it's really hard to say who's going to come out on top.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, and you look at the way the spring race went, where the first stage was, like you mentioned, was all Ford because they qualified so well. Track position is such a big thing in the opening stage where guys are starting to get a handle on their cars and everything, especially in the summer where the track is so slick and hot. It's going to be interesting to watch. But you look at those Hendrick cars there. You have Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, William Byron all starting in the top 20 along with the Fords. Alex Bowman needs a win. That's going to be pretty. Yep, you see it right there. Alex Bowman 9th, Kyle Larson 11th, Chase Elliott 15th, and William Byron 18th. So, guy like Alex Bowman needs a win. So this could be the night to really help him out.
Could be a huge night for Bowman if he was to do that. Just get all the critics quiet down. In the chat room, a couple people in the chat room. Cody, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will be close. If that's your pick a winner pick, that'll be also great. He also mentioned Austin Dillon too. Austin Dillon always seems to be good at these super speedway tracks, but is again just so hit or miss. Right place, right time. And Denver, one of our regulars, Jackpot Racing, who got their lottery ticket tonight.
I wouldn't say it's that random. I don't know.
It's less of a lottery ticket than Daytona and Talladega, but it still has the essence. It's more of a fortune cookie, I would say, than a lottery ticket.
I like that.
A fortune cookie, and then, of course, the fortune cookie has the backside where it has the numbers. It's going to be really interesting to see how these numbers are going to roll out at the end of the race of who's on top of the leaderboard, second, third, fourth, fifth. Maybe use that for your next lottery ticket. I don't know what the Powerball Mega Millions are right now, but they're going to be pretty big. For Ford, I think they really focus on the speed when it comes to qualifying, because if there's one thing, that means these 8 Ford drivers that are starting up front got great pit position. We have green flag pit stops. They're not going to be tripping over other Fords, but a little bit of havoc for those behind, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a detriment. At the end of the day, I think it's going to be something where, just like in the past, you might see Chevrolet, Toyotas. Just a matter of if we see that big one for Fords. Considering you look at the front 2 rows, they've won races. They're all in the playoffs. But then look at Ryan Preece, 5th, looking for his first career win in the Cup Series in that 60 team. His team owner, Brad Keselowski, right behind, he's in a must-win situation. Just like I think with where Bowman has all those critics saying, does he belong in that right? With Keselowski, people are probably starting to bring up, are you past your prime? He would love to silence those people down. And then some of the surprises, Cole Custer, Zane Smith, if they were to get a win, that will shake up the playoff picture big time. As you may have seen earlier already, we're getting down to single-digit number of drivers that are in on points. Last night, we saw a first-time winner in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So, of course, Ben and Brandon will be talking about that on Encore. Tanner, for the Cup Series, though, what is the likelihood of a first-time winner, and is Preece on top of that list for you?
I'd say that the chances of a first-time winner happening tonight are probably higher than they are at most traditional ovals, but I wouldn't say they're as high as somewhere like Daytona and Talladega, which, as we discussed, is a bit closer to, as one of our commenters put, a lottery ticket. So I do think the possibility is a bit higher for that to happen tonight, but as far as the driver that's on top of my list to get their first win tonight, it probably isn't going to be Ryan Preece. And, that's obviously no disrespect to him. I think that he very well could pull it off. The RFK Fords have had a lot of speed here in the past. In fact, Brad Keselowski was in a fantastic opportunity to take the win in the 2023 spring race, and unfortunately lost out to former teammate Joey Logano in that event. But my driver on the top of the list is Carson Hocevar. He qualified even worse in the spring and made it all the way up into the top 10 by the end of the first stage in that race, and obviously had a shot to win that race prior to that final caution rolling out when the big one erupted on the backstretch. So Carson Hocevar is probably at the top of my list, but I wouldn't be surprised to see someone like Ryan Preece or even John Hunter Nemechek have a shake at winning this race, maybe even Todd Gilliland. But yeah, Carson Hocevar tops my list of potential first-time winners based on his performance in the spring and his overall aggressive nature. I feel like he will be a guy that makes a lot of moves tonight, and granted, that could land him out of the race on lap 32. It could lead him getting to victory lane on lap 260. We'll just have to find out.
We're talking about that Mega Millions. It's now $348 million. So your lottery ticket at Daytona or Talladega could win $348 million. That's pretty lucrative. I'm willing to take my chance on that. And I'm also willing to take a chance on a guy like John Hunter Nemechek, who lately, I mean, he really has been proving that Legacy Motor Club has improved this season. I mean, ran well in the Coca-Cola 600, ran well at Pocono as well. You look at a track like this where it kind of combines the elements of, you know, the handling that you need to run well at an intermediate track and the speed that you need to run well at a super speedway. And they've had the handling and they've also had the speed as well. You know, Toyota has, I mean, they came out of the gate pretty strong with this new Toyota body. Looked good in the 500 as well. Looked good at Atlanta. I mean, Christopher Bell is the guy who won this race in the spring. So I think if first-time winner, I would definitely put Carson Hocevar at the top as well, just with how well he has run. But if you want another guy, I think John Hunter Nemechek.
John
and
Hunter
Mexico City as well, too.
John Hunter Nemechek, I think it is a good driver to watch. That team has been improving a lot, and I remember last year I was thinking John Hunter Nemechek was going to have a good year coming back after a year away. Didn't work out, but it seems like this year is starting to. In the chat room, Cody, Dark Horse race, Josh Berry also. Those are my three money cars. Carson Hocevar graveyard tonight from Denver.
Whoa, okay.
That's a bit. Cody thinking Carson might get wrecked. We also got Corey LaJoie could even win. It's anyone's race. When it comes to LaJoie, you thinking he's a winning contender? I feel if he's in the top 20 with 15 laps to go, I think he might be.
It's a Rick Ware car. It's the second Rick Ware car. I don't really see that. But if there is a massive accident that takes out about half the field, like on lap 2 last spring, sure, he's got a shot just as well as anybody if he comes out clean. But yeah, a Rick Ware car winning the race, that would be quite the feat. I'll say that.
I'll contrast that and say that I think Corey LaJoie, I mean, you look 275 starts in the NASCAR Cup Series, you know, his 11 top 10s have mostly come on super speedways. He's pretty strong on these tracks. You know, you look at the Daytona 500 where he came up through the field, was making moves and got to the lead, just didn't have the help that he needed on that final restart. He didn't look as good at Atlanta, but, you know, you look back a couple of years ago where they had, you know, the summer race, JJ Ailey was up there in that 15 car and had a chance and was holding his own. You know, I would not count them out of running a, you know, maybe top 10, top 15, somewhere around there. And maybe something, I don't think, I'm not going to say it's going to take a massive pileup to get LaJoie up there to the front, but a couple things happen. He could be in contention to win this race.
Absolutely. Good shot at being in contention. Denver is saying if Carson's in front of Ricky tonight, Rick is wrecking Carson. Tanner, thoughts on that comment?
So a couple of things. if you intentionally wreck somebody at a super speedway track, I think you should just be suspended the next week. So that'd be a good way for Ricky to go home. At the same time, I think that Ricky Stenhouse, outside of the Nashville DNF, has done very well this year to keep himself out of trouble for practically the first time in his entire NASCAR Cup Series career. And I mean, we're not even a year removed from Kyle Busch going on the Pat McAfee show and calling him to the entire viewing public Ricky Stenhouse on air. That used to be his reputation until this whole Hocevar incident happened. And for some reason, we've been acting like he's a completely different guy because, you know, the new aggressive guy got into him. So I don't think that it would be in Ricky's best interest on any front for him to go and wreck somebody at a super speedway, especially considering the 2018 Daytona summer race where memes were being made all over the place of him having a much larger car just driving through everybody and causing 3 different cautions that night. So I don't think it would be in Ricky Stenhouse's best interest to wreck Hocevar at all. Actually, I think it would actually benefit him to just keep that threat alive that he might wreck Carson Hocevar, because I feel like last week that worked well enough for Stenhouse to get a lot of good stage points with Hocevar pushing him ahead. So just to, you know, kind of conclude on that thought, I just don't think that'd be a good idea on any front. And I think that if Ricky wants to continue this, you know, new found respect in the Cup garage that he has for not wrecking, I think it would benefit him to not do that, especially tonight.
Yeah, and let's not forget too that, I mean, Ricky has been in the Cup Series for now 13 seasons. I mean, he's a 2-time Xfinity champion. He's got wins on merit, you know, on super speedways for just being a great super speedway driver. You know, this season he's been grinding out some great finishes and not making mistakes and being in playoff contention where other guys have made mistakes. So I think, yeah, newfound respect and it from just not only his credentials in the past, but just like how he's been driving this year.
Driving, trying to build that trust among the driver. Cody saying, I pray you guys are right about John Hunter Nemechek. I win 600. That would be
that'd be a cash out.
I put a little money on the 13 cars. Thanks for the advice. Y'all are great. Of course, we encourage everyone have fun. Also, be responsible when playing, especially in DraftKings. I know taking a look at DraftKings, Joey Logano plus 850, the favorite Ryan Blaney at plus 650. I'm scrolling now for John Hunter Nemechek plus 3500. That would be a big payday if John Hunter Nemechek was to get that win. So overall, I am just anticipating this is going to be one of those races where a lot of people are going to be watching, just wondering what's going to happen next lap. Green flag pit stops, that's going to be really critical for everybody. Overall, I just think we're going to be in for what should be a treat of a race. I do not anticipate it's going to be a Ford runaway. I just don't see that happening. For Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe, they're hoping that they're going to see the opportunity to get the lead because they are the lone non-Ford drivers in the top 10. One of the big things, you look at the points, Alex Bowman right there, 20 points above Ryan Preece. Of course, Shane Van Gisbergen, number 11. So we're running out of space for people to point their way in. So for Alex Bowman, if he can't get a win, he'll love to score points. But I have to ask, what is going on with 2311? Because you see Riley Herbst at 20th. You then take a look at the second page, and that's where you're going to find Ty Reddick, Bubba Wallace, 23rd, 24th. Did not have that great of an effort. Then Denny Hamlin, 33rd. Now, I know people have always talked about the distractions of the court case, everything going on. Jonathan, is this becoming a concern now? And especially as we're getting closer to the end of regular season for 2311? Or are they just simply a little bit off the pace and maybe not related to all the off-track distractions?
I think 2311 has just kind of been off a little bit this season. Also, one thing too, I want to also point out, Christopher Bell is also down there in 28th. as well. So, I mean, and Eric Jones is 26. So I think it's more so just a Toyota thing where they've always been more set up to run in the race, with less downforce. So that way they can kind of be more maneuverable in the pack. They're not as susceptible to aero push. They can kind of make moves. They can pull out a line. They may not have the most raw speed, but they have the maneuverability that they need, the suck up that they need to be able to win the race. But going to what you're saying about, is this all a distraction to 2311? I don't really think so, because I think when you look at everything that's going on, this is like an issue for everybody at the top, with Michael Jordan, with Denny Hamlin, with their attorney, Jeffrey Kessler, with everybody who's the executives at 2311. And then also like the executives over at Front Row Motorsports. Look at the order. I mean, Zane Smith is starting 8th. Todd Gilliland is starting 17th. Solid starts. They're doing a solid job. Not as good as they have done before, but, they have kind of been a little off, kind of like 2311 with expanding to 3 cars, trying to figure out resources, different things like that. So I don't really think the lawsuit stuff is really an issue with the team. I think that the teams and the drivers are really able to compartmentalize it very well, and they just do their jobs and do their things. Is it on their mind? Certainly. But like I've said before on here, when you lock in to working on a car or, getting in the driver's seat, I mean, that's what you're focused on. You're not worried about injunctions or trials or settlements or anything like that.
Yeah, I totally agree that I don't think this is any sort of like a lawsuit hiccup that 2311's been going through. I think I laid it out pretty well on last week's post-race show. So if you want a bit more of a more drawn out and detailed explanation of why I think 2311's been off the pace, go check that portion out from last week's show. But to kind of condense it, I think that Jonathan kind of touched on it with Front Row, in that Front Row added a 3rd car. And I think that Front Row's problems are a little bit larger than that. They have to do with the team not having a single Cup winner as a driver. And, that kind of like collective inexperience, I think, is just in general going to hold you back. But with 2311, I think it's, a lot of different problems all at once. I think that adding that 3rd car with the 35 team, which is a completely brand new team that hasn't run a full schedule. So they're obviously going to be falling behind to start out with, unless they have like a complete dynamo in the car. And with all due respect to Riley Herbst, that's not exactly what I would associate him with being. Then you have Bubba Wallace. He has a brand new crew chief for this year that has not crew chiefed at the Cup Series level. So he's seeing a lot of tracks for the first time as a crew chief. This will be one of the first tracks that he sees for the second time, Charles Denike will, in Atlanta. So I would expect them to be a little bit better compared to the spring, where they finished in the top 10. And you look at Tyler Reddick and crew chief Billy Scott, you would think that after their Final 4 appearance last year at Phoenix, that they would come off of last year's regular season title and, set the world on fire, but they really haven't shown any race winning pace for whatever reason. And I think that it's kind of a little column A, a little column B, like the rest of the team isn't as strong because it's so new. So it's affecting the more tenured car in the 45 team. So you kind of, mash all that together. And like I said, it's kind of a cornucopia of problems for 2311 that, like I said, I don't think really have a whole lot to do with the lawsuit. And to Jonathan's point, I do think Toyota as a manufacturer at these kind of tracks set their cars up to handle better in the draft rather than, risk them being sketchy just so they can get a good qualifying time in. Because at the end of the day, being able to maneuver your way through the pack is a little bit more valuable than, top end pace. So I don't think 2311's in like real red alert territory. This isn't a DEFCON 1 situation for them, but I do think as we're approaching the halfway point of the regular season that we are at least at DEFCON 4. So they should probably, like take stock of where they're at right now and try to start winning a race, because as we saw, I think we have 5 guys between the cut line and the winners. So if you can just cut out the middleman and not be part of that group because you've won a race, that would definitely be encouraging.
Be a big encouragement for them. Now, this race, of course, you got another layer in there, and that is the NASCAR bracket challenge. So it's going to come down to the racing going on, which I think is going to be the primary focus. Nobody's going to be racing, asking the crew chief, am I ahead of the person in the bracket challenge? So we encourage everyone to share the bracket challenge, especially on social media, Grid Network TV. We posted ours on Blue Sky, X, and Instagram. There are some very interesting matchups that I feel could be potential bracket busters. Michael McDowell, AJ Allmendinger, Kyle Larson, and Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, Carson Hocevar, Josh Berry, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski. All of them, as I mentioned, the higher seat driver was first, the lower seat driver I mentioned second. And I see a lot of potential bracket busters because, especially when you're looking at Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, either one of those drivers are capable of going out there and getting the win. You look at Michael McDowell and AJ Allmendinger. They're both good at road courses, and we got a lot of road courses. That could be a busted bracket. Jonathan Tanner, I got to say, when it comes to these pairings, which pairings most likely to see an upset and bust many of the people's brackets out there?
Ooh. All right. I got one.
Well, you go ahead and go first, Jonathan. What do you got?
Ty Dillon and Denny Hamlin. Let me see y'all. What do y'all think?
Oh, I don't think that's out of the realm. I mean, this kind of track, as I mentioned earlier, a wreck can take out half the field, and Denny Hamlin could very well be susceptible to being taken out in that crash, and Ty Dillon isn't. So, I mean, I'd say all of these are all susceptible to an upset tonight if things go wrong for them, and it can be completely out of your control.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's on the basis of a wreck or anything like that. I think you look at how Denny Hamlin has run at this track, and he's had some good races here, but he also just hasn't run that well here. You know, I mean, he's kind of crept into the top 10 like he did in the spring, and obviously like the fall race last year at Atlanta was more so of his accord. But, you know, in the past, he's had spins, he's had wrecks. He's kind of the race in general at Atlanta, like the races in general at Atlanta just haven't been in his control that we've really seen out of Denny Hamlin or at other super speedways in the past, or even other drivers here at Atlanta before. And whereas a guy like Ty Dillon, I mean, in the past, he has had a great super speedway record. I mean, at one point, I think at Talladega, he had an average finish of something like 12.5, which when you compare that on like the all-time, and I would have to go back and look for sure, when you compare like all-time stats, there was one point where he was in the conversation. Well, I won't say conversation, but when you look at the stats, he was up there with the guys like Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon as far as like average finish, just because he was able to keep his car clean and was able to get it to the finish. So, a guy like Ty Dillon could upset Denny Hamlin tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I'm looking at the one right beside it, Noah Gragson versus Chase Briscoe. Gregson's had a very strong front row motorsports vehicle here at Atlanta Motor Speedway as recently as the spring. I think that he could possibly put someone like Chase Briscoe out of position late in the going. I've seen Briscoe have a number of sketchy incidents here at Atlanta, and even last fall where he just kind of drove into an active accident. So when you have a guy that's more prone to mistakes versus a guy that's fearless, I think that it tends to go the fearless guy's way at these kinds of tracks. I'm also looking at Joey Logano versus Alex Bowman. Logano has obviously been very successful at this new layout. And Alex Bowman, while he has a top 10 or 2 here in the last 7 races, hasn't exactly been his best track. Hocevar versus Blaney, as we saw in the spring, that could be as close as two drivers being in the top five. Hocevar finished second and Blaney finished fourth in the spring. So you also got to look at Reddick, Suarez, and Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace has a tendency to either really compete here or finish sub 20th. So Daniel Suarez is one of the better drivers at this configuration and has been known to rise from the back and be able to compete. So it's any telling that he could, shoot up from 30th and go out and win this race, or even just finish ahead of Bubba. Austin Dillon has a very solid shot at knocking Chase Elliott off of this bracket and, crushing the hearts of the hometown faithful. The weirdest matchup on this entire list, though, is Ty Gibbs versus Justin Haley. And frankly, as much as Ty Gibbs has done well here in the past, I still don't have any idea how that one's going to go. But I think for my definitive one that will probably get flipped here, it'll be Todd Gilliland versus Chris Buescher. I think that Todd Gilliland has had a number of strong runs at this track and frankly could have won last year's spring race, but wasn't able to have luck go his way in that event. And I believe he finished 26th. But I think that Todd Gilliland really wants to make a statement now that he is the true flagship driver of Front Row Motorsports. And I think that a win tonight amidst all this courtroom nonsense would really do him and that team some good, especially to lock themselves into the playoffs, assuming he would go out and win. But I don't think Chris Buescher has exactly a fantastic record at this racetrack, even though RFK always brings a fast vehicle for him. So I would look at the 3 to 30 matchup as the one that could probably face some turmoil for an upset.
A lot of room for upset. This is just a crazy stretch of races with Atlanta, road courses, the Monster Mile. Oh my goodness. Whoever does not have a busted bracket and early on, you are in some rare company, in my opinion. In the chat room, Denver, I see all the drivers who's not in the brackets like SVG playing the role of pest for the drivers who's in the in-season tournament. Shane Van Gisbergen, especially on Sonoma, Chicago, my goodness, that could be a position make a difference, especially when you have then, of course, the bigger picture, the championship at the end. And Cody, so who y'all pick to win the race?
All right, Cody. Well,
getting right down to business, Cody. All right.
You sneaking on our scripts, huh? Come on.
Yeah. So
he's placing all those bets and he's looking at our scripts.
So that leads us to pick a winner. Now, Cody, I don't see his name on the leaderboard. So good news, Cody. Plenty of time to get on the leaderboard for pick a winner. For everyone brand new watching first time, rules are simple. 1 point for each correct guess. This weekend, we already have MotoGP, the sprint race. Marc Marquez, surprise, surprise, won that race. World Rally Championship is going on, so those picks are locked in. So that means everyone's left with Formula One, the NASCAR Cup Series, and the MotoGP Grand Prix. So in the chat room, if you're watching, comment with who's going to win Formula One, MotoGP, and NASCAR. The three of us here, we will be sharing our NASCAR predictions. And of course, there's a second page. So we got a lot of room on the leaderboard, and we're definitely encouraging everyone to participate because across the 7 series we follow, there's still over 100 races left. So we got a lot of time for everyone to get onto the leaderboard. Jonathan, we'll start with you with pick a winner. I know you are in 14th place right now. So you got a good opportunity to gain some ground, get higher up, maybe closer into the top 10 when it comes to the NASCAR Cup Series race. Quaker State 400 presented by Walmart at EchoPark Speedway, formerly Atlanta. Who is your pick a winner?
I would go with Alex Bowman for tonight.
Oh, wow. I see you were laying out a breadcrumb for us earlier now.
Oh, yeah.
As for me, I am going to go with the driver that I have also listed as my in-season tournament winner. Bubba Wallace. He is going to win tonight, and it'll propel him into a mode where he goes out and probably wins Indy as well.
That would be huge, a winning streak like no other. For me, it was a really hard coming with a pick, especially for this race. But I too am going with a Toyota, and I'm going to go with a driver that's going to become a repeat winner, a sweep of Atlanta EchoPark. So it would be the first to say I've won at EchoPark Speedway, even though it's Atlanta. Christopher Bell is going to make the sweep at the Speedway, EchoPark Speedway, and I think he is going to advance to the next round of the bracket challenge. In the chat room, Denver's my lottery winner, Shane Van Gisbergen, or the sensible winner, Chase Elliott. Man,
not a bad shot. Not
So
a bad
Denver,
shout.
You going to bet on that, Denver? Or we're going to hear about $600 or more or something?
Definitely. Then I know looking for Cody, who had mentioned about Ricky Stenhouse, Austin Dillon. So we encourage everyone comment with who you think. James,
No,
Denver's going with yes, he is. So, so very interesting to see everyone's participation in pick winner. I know Denver climbed up a lot, 17th in the stands, and he started on the second page a few weeks ago. So Denver proving it. You can get up there, and of course, we encourage everyone share their picks for MotoGP, Formula One. Since we're all here, I assume we're all going to go with Marc Marquez for the MotoGP race, since he seems unstoppable.
Yeah. Kiska can never lead us wrong.
Yeah. The crazy part, Kiska would be at 10 if we started this Marc Marquez thing going earlier. He is just that dominant in MotoGP. And of course, we encourage everyone, if you are watching or you missed the opportunity to comment, social media, hashtag pick a winner. You'll find that on Blue Sky, X, Instagram. Share your picks so you get on the leaderboard. Plenty of room, as I mentioned. And of course, if you're going to be there, follow the grid ranking, grid endurance performance index. And a big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin Michelle, Mark Robin, David, and Max for investing in the Grid Network through Patreon. Link in the video description to go to our Patreon page and do a monthly investment, keeping us on the air. And we'll be on the air tomorrow for the wrap-up show following Formula One. NASCAR tonight. Then we got MotoGP, F1. World Rally will be wrapping up. We'll be on the air. Then Grid Encore. Monday, Ben and Brandon, another Motor Monday. Xfinity Series, Truck Series. Exciting weekend at Lime Rock. That's going to be a lot of fun. That race is going on tomorrow. And overall, I want to say it's going to be a fun race weekend with Wednesday coming up, Grid tonight. And then we do this all over again next race weekend. For Jonathan and Tanner, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races.